We got a
We have
question.
a chat question.
Okay, we have a chat question here.
It says, what about green light?
What
Green
about
preserves night vision and provides better contrast.
green lights? I've heard that comment before, and I don't know enough about it. I don't know if anyone else has I've heard about it, and it's supposed to be better, but at the same time, I understand that our eyes are most sensitive to green. So it kind of seems counterintuitive. The reason that we use red light is because it is the color that our eyes are least sensitive to. So again, but I don't know the science behind it.
Rods will pick up red.
Yeah.
So you can have a lower light of red and still pick it up with the rod will pick it up. You don't see the other.
So yeah, here in the in person saying that, yeah, when your rods, which are the basically what picks up the color in your eyes.
See right
they can
here.
pick up
Rods are black and white.
Oh, sorry, rods are black and
Cones
white.
are colored
Cones
red.
are colored, rods are black and white. Sorry. So the rods can actually pick up some red, and that's
See
why.
more with lower light.
So it can
red.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and also very important when you're out there, don't touch any glass, optical surfaces. Very, very bad. You want to avoid being very loud and boisterous. You know, astronomy can be quiet and peaceful and meditative. But yeah, it's, you know, the last thing you want to do is to be loud, especially when folks turn in at night. So
You should not be asleep at night.
I agree. I think, you know, I'm usually up into the wee hours. But yeah. Going to the next one, don't litter. I was a Cub Master for a while, and I really love the Boy Scouts slogan, and leave no trace. So when you go, regardless of where it is, make sure that no one can tell that you've been there for, you know, when you pack up and leave. So, you know, pack up your trash, try and make it a better spot than when you came from. Again, and also be careful of how, you know, what sort of tarps you're putting out. Make sure it's not going to kill the grass, that sort of thing. So again, just make sure that no one can see that you've been there once you've left. So the next one, this is especially true out at Big Woods or any other place we go, depending upon where you're driving. One, you don't want to drive too fast because it might be dark and you can't see where you're going. And secondly, you want to avoid kicking up as much dust. You don't want to kick up a lot of dust, so drive slowly. Jump to the next one. Be courteous when other people are setting up or tearing down. A lot of us have a very methodical way of setting up equipment. And I know, and I'm guilty of this as well, when, you know, people arrive at a start party, like, hey, I haven't seen you in forever, we're gonna chat. Okay, I'm trying to get through. It's like everything happens in steps, and sometimes you'll forget to do something. And I can tell you how many times I've forgotten to plug in a particular cord. And then, you know, you're like, okay, why isn't everything on? Oh, that one cord stopped me from setting things up. So definitely when someone is kind of focused on setting up their gear, give them the space they need. If they want to reach out while they're packing, you know, setting things up or packing up, then that's fine. Go to the next one. Watch your step. You do not want to kick out someone's power supply. You definitely don't want to bump someone's scope that's been aligned, polar aligned, because it takes time for that equipment to be set up. And all you got to do is just kick it a little bit, and their alignment's off, and you've got to go through and do an entire new polar alignment, star alignment, everything. And especially you don't want to lose power on something. You have to have your machine reboot, or God forbid, you know, lose the slew you were working on. So, oh yeah, very, very careful. Next one, kids, and I have my own kids, but you want to make sure. I think it's a great hobby to get kids interested in, but they shouldn't be running around and playing around scopes. Or using them as jungle gyms. That's a really bad idea. I love the fact, and I think I saw Amy on the in the virtual meeting. I love the one recommendation she had when doing events with kids. just have them put their hands behind their backs and when they try to view through the eyepiece. And it's a great way because oftentimes their first inclination is to grab the scope or grab the eyepiece, and they try and kind of like use it as leverage. So and engage the parents also and help the kids look for something or look to the eyepiece. Pets, if allowed, you definitely want to make sure they're on a leash and they're under control. That's the last thing you want is a dog wrapped around your tripod legs, especially Bentley.
Hey.
Bentley's are great. He's always with me. And it goes without saying, pick up after your dog, just in case. Steve.
Amy Sale is making the comment, look with your eyes, not your hands.
I love that. I love that.
That's a great comment.
Yep. Look with your eyes, not with your hands. All right. The next one, music. Hey, the music that you love may be really, really irritating to someone else. I know that is absolutely the case with my kids. The music I love is like chalk, nails on a chalkboard to them. So don't be jamming out at 3 in the morning, or if you need to, use a headset. Then alcohol. Some star parties ban it. Some star parties, it's required to deal with the folks that you're observing with. Especially, if it's been a difficult week where all you've been able to see is the Virginia line and nebula, which stands for the Virginia North Carolina nebula. It always seems to, kind of make its way right over Staunton River and keep us clouded out for several days. So that helps make the time go by. Then we've got smoking and vaping. I would recommend smokers stay kind of downwind, away from telescopes. One, that stuff can coat the optics, and then your optics become just magnets for more pollen, more dew. And, again, you've got non-smokers that don't necessarily want to have smoke there. And even though you're outside, it still can have an effect on folks.
Make sure your mosquito spray.
That's another good point. The thing to make here, if you are applying any sort of aerosol bug spray, make sure that you do it away from the telescopes. That stuff is really hard to get off optics correctly.
Actually, a really good tip for if you do use some type of misting spray and you're going to apply it, you might want to consider actually spraying that into a cloth and then wiping it around. So that way you're actually not aspirating that mist up in the atmosphere. So that's just one thing to think about,
The solvents will melt plastic. I've seen damage.
Oh, yeah.
Jim said solvents and melt plastic. Yeah, you know exactly what you're talking about. Before you go, especially if it's kind of just a one-night affair or even a multi-night affair, know what facilities are provided. Is power available? And you're going to need to charge your laptop, or how about if you've got a motorized mount? Do they have bathroom facilities? They may or may not. Guess what? When you do a RAC obs out of Big Woods, no bathrooms are there. And food. Where if you're going to camp out for several nights, make sure that you have access to food and drink. Do they sell it? You have to bring your own. And then lastly, we talked about green before, but laser pointers. Ask or find out what the policy is for laser pointers. In some places, they're allowed up to a certain point, so usually early in the evening. Some places outright ban them. So make sure you know what the regulations are for the local place. All right, comment from Frank.
I have something else to add to that too. Make sure you tell everyone that this property where the star party or observance session is taking place is strictly at your own risk only.
Yep.
For instance, sky watching can be a dangerous activity due to low light, particularly curbs and things to trip over that you might see. They actually have a notice for the Charlotte's observance site.
So definitely observe at your own risk. There are no lifeguards out there. So we jump over. So this is kind of a what can you expect when we're doing typical outreach? So this is going to be a star party. It's a few hours long, and we're out there sharing our equipment, our views with others. So if you have been selected as one of the volunteers, assuming you're going to be a volunteer and not attendant to view, you might be providing your own equipment, and the public's going to be viewing through that. So if you are very meticulous about a specific eyepiece you have, and you maybe don't want mascara on it from a number of people, maybe break out some of the older Plossels. Additionally, if you're going to be, you might be helping with the flow of folks, so kind of a line leader. You might be answering questions from people, and it's a great way to engage folks as well. And this is a great time to alert the kids before they get up to the scope, like Amy said. Look with your eyes, not with your hands. And then these tend to have a lot of members of the public, sometimes well into the hundreds, and not many telescopes. There are going to be lines on that. And you can see here, this is a picture we took from the hotel observatory, or observing lounge, if you will, down in downtown Raleigh. The Willard, thank you. Could not remember the name of the hotel. So here we're in downtown Raleigh, lots of ambient light, the moon was out, but we're still able to have lots of folks attend the star party. And you're typically going to be showing just very bright objects, the moon, the planets, maybe some very, very bright deep space objects. So again, you're not going to be going after a lot of the targets you want to see. It's about the targets the public wants to see. And a best practice is to go ahead and with the other astronomers there, practice, or not practice, but come up with a plan of who's going to be on what targets, kind of distribute the targets so not everyone's looking at Saturn or things like that. So that's usually a good way to kind of keep people engaged.
Let me just make a quick comment on that. So as Mike has brought out, that this was an example of a public star party where we actually gather at a local place to share our knowledge of the night sky. So I really want to encourage, I know that a lot of the club members have new telescopes. I want to encourage you guys to actually join us when we do events like this, because we really do need you out there volunteering. And as Mike has said many times, even though you may not feel confident, just because you have a passion for astronomy and already have a telescope, you already know about 90% more than anyone else does in the general public. So we really do want to encourage you guys to come out and join us when we do events like this. The more scopes we have, the more success we have. And as Mike said, we'll coordinate who gets on what object, but this is really where you are here to share your knowledge with other people and help encourage others.
Thank you. Okay. So then what can you expect when you're doing kind of an observing session or maybe one of these one-night star parties? So this is a good example of, going out to Big Woods or Howell Woods. So you're going to probably have more amateur astronomers attending. So you're going to have more telescopes there with fewer attendees. So the ratio of telescopes to observer is great. So you're going to have much smaller lines. In fact, we're not going to have any lines at all. And again, it's pretty much folks bringing their own equipment. It's also a great, some members of the public will be there. We used to have it open to members of the public. Again, we're still kind of wading our way through what the post-pandemic situation looks like, but definitely some guests. These will be more remote locations, again, out by Jordan Lake or out near Johnson County. Howell Woods. And jump to the next one. The facilities, again, might be lacking. So speaking specifically about Big Woods or Howell Woods, no electric connections. So you got to bring your own power, whether that be a bunch of D-cell batteries, a big marine battery, or whatever you need.
Howell Woods does have.
Oh, okay, so Howell Woods does have one connection
Or
or
it's a box.
it's a box, okay. So bring in an extension
A long
cord, a
extension.
long extension cord. You might have limited or no access to restrooms. I know Howell Woods has restrooms, but we've got to call ahead to make sure they're unlocked.
That's not what it's worth.
And that doesn't always work. So Big Woods has none. So again, the woods are your friend there. Food and drinks are most likely not available unless you're packing it in yourself. But you know, what I do think is really valuable with these sessions is that, again, you're interacting with folks. You can share stories, share experiences, share equipment. I know at our last RAC Ops, we were sharing some eyepieces. And just kind of people wanting to know, hey, how do I improve my views? What's maybe the next series of investments I need to make in terms of eyepieces or finders or things like that. So it's a great way to kind of get a sense of what people are doing.
Real quick. So also some of the things we've been doing recently, like when we had the meteor shower, we were just kind of like all laying out on a mat looking at it. But also too, we started up a Zoom session and shared that with people and let them know that the Zoom session was going on. And so we are branching out and using technology to kind of draw people in to make it more social, more friendly. In the case of this meteor shower, it was a little less conducive, but we'll do more of those.
Yeah, but it was fun regardless. My son put a foam mattress on the roof rack of an SUV, and he and his girlfriend watched it from there. So that was interesting. Okay. Also, be ready for a lack of shelter. So, and this is oftentimes you'll hear us kind of hemming and hawing on making the call for observing, because again, there's no place to take shelter. So I mean, maybe if it's storming, is it not going to storm? You name it. So that's especially true if you're going to be someplace more than one night. So just be ready, for that. But I think most importantly, you get to focus on your observing goals. It's what you want to see in terms of your taking your images or targets, or while some of the imagers are taking their targets, they can come and borrow your scope if you're doing visual. Chris Cole. Okay, and then now, what about when we go to a big honkin' star party, the multi-night one? So, what can you expect? As Jim alluded to it early, you're camping. If you do not like camping, a star party might pose some difficulties. Imagine an open field filled with dozens to hundreds. I think Winter Star Party had gotten up to 500 plus.
Around 6 when it finally turned back.
600 even. So, of other like-minded amateur astronomers. And then if on the next one, most people are going to bring their own equipment. So it's a great place to just kind of check stuff out, who's using what. Check out that 30-inch Dobsonian with the night vision
eyepiece.
Yeah, that is a treat. And then these are definitely going to be more remote, and you're gonna look at places that have lower horizons, so you're not going to have hopefully not a lot of obstructions. So if you want to bring a hammock, you're not going to find a lot of trees where you're camping to hook your hammock to, but definitely under some really, really dark skies. And what you get under dark skies is amazing. You don't have to be just a visual observer. What you can image from a dark sky is just so much better. You're able to get those longer exposures, assuming your equipment will keep up with it. Now, some places will have either bunkhouses or cabins or something akin to dorms that you can rent out. Those tend to be very limited, so plan well in advance.
They have a bunkhouse at Stanton River.
Yes, yes. And I think that's why sometimes we don't get the dates for Stanton River well ahead of time is because the folks that tend to go more often are busy reserving. and only after reservations are made are the
We have a
pages.
hard time getting those things.
Typically there are options for food, whether it's a meal plan you have to sign up for, or in the case of Staunton River, you can just go down to the diner. And back in the Mid-Atlantic Star Party days, you had the scouts that basically ran a food truck. So definitely different options will apply. It will typically include different events, scheduled events, various speakers, vendors. Hopefully, we'll get back to vendors. That was always a great time. Swap tables, and even sometimes door prizes. So it's a good place to start to get around and see things. I actually came home from my last Star Party with an 8-inch 𝙈𝙤 for a steal of a price.
Wow.
I think I paid $260 for it. So yep, and it's working out great. It's also a great way to learn from fellow amateurs and build relationships. And I can't emphasize this enough. So the first time I ever heard about and tried to observe a quasar was at Staunton River. And it was 3 gentlemen that each had a 𝙈𝙚 and a 𝙈𝙤𝙪, their fiberglass campers. And I just happened to be set up next to them, and they were talking about observing these quasars, and it's just you overhear it, and you learn stuff. I've made great friendships, people that I would not even never cross paths with, but for the fact that we're going to star parties. And again,
So we were shown one 2 weeks ago. We were up at Staunton River, and one of our members, I'm not sure if we're doing names, but one member was imaging, and with his wife present. And we were doing visual, and Paul, we'll go with first names, it was 18-inch obsession telescope. And he came over and had found a quasar. I think it was PCPG 1718 plus 481. And it's like 8 billion years away. And so he found it. So we all had to stop what we were doing and go have a look so we can say we had seen 8 billion. The Earth wasn't even here. The sun wasn't here. And the light had been coming this way somehow for that time. So it was kind of fun to see that. And you meet a lot of people.
exactly. I saw my first supernova explosion in one of the Messier galaxies. Again, thanks to being at a star party and folks helping me figure out where to look. So again, you cannot emphasize enough the camaraderie and what you can learn there. Also a great way to look at other equipment setups and even view through large scopes. Again, for folks that are interested, it's like, oh, what telescope should I buy? I'm new to astronomy. This is actually a great way to learn. Spend a couple nights out there. You don't have to bring your own equipment. Feel free to mooch off of everybody. I think, and that's the one thing that I've realized that is great about the amateur astronomy community. They are, I'd say 99% of the people are more than happy to talk with you, to spend time with you, to educate you, and kind of help you learn from some of their mistakes or hopefully some of their good deeds. So yeah, it's a great option. You'll have many nights to tackle all the list of objects that you want to observe or image. And again, it's under some really good dark skies for the most part. Especially if you go to Winter Star Party and you can start seeing stuff down to the horizon on the bucket list. And there may be a public component to it.
And don't forget the trusty old binoculars.
Cannot forget that my binoculars come with me to every single star party as well.
A binocular is like a magnifying glass for the sky, while a telescope's like a microscope.
Exactly.
You can see images just as red.
All right, we're gonna start with that. So this is a quick video. I may ask you to pause a little bit before you even move in there. So this is a video taken by a drone near Staunton River. We're looking here. This is actually towards the east here. It actually is on a peninsula where the Staunton and the Dan River meet. And this area that I'm kind of highlighting by the pool area, this is actually the diner. And Jim alluded to a place where now they usually set up some tents down at the bottom of this parking lot, and that's where they'll come out and serve food. But if you play the video, you can kind of see here. And if you pause real quick. Oops. Well, yeah, we'll just play the video. I can talk to it.
Very nice. Hit play.
There we go.
There we go.
So, yeah, you've got the main office there. You can see everyone kind of spread out, vendor tents, lots of things. So it's a really, really good time. You can actually see right in the upper part there is my ice fishing shelter, which is a fantastic way to shield your computer monitor and everything so you don't upset the visual observers. It's completely light proof. Okay, so yeah, Staunton River I think has been awesome. We've mentioned the very big 30-inch Dobsonian. There is a picture of it, and it is an amazing scope. But you can see it's a really fun open area. It is literally you're camping in a big huge field. Down on the bottom right-hand side, this was taken. It was 2015. This is a picture that is titled "Envy and Justification." So that right there is I believe it's a 20-inch Meade SCT. The gentleman actually has to have a robot that comes out, and it's like a motorized lifter to get it to go onto his equatorial map. He cannot lift it himself. It's over 300 pounds. This may be one of the very few times you'll see a warning label on a telescope. Most of the time it's don't look, at it through the sun, you might blind. There is a warning of possible death, because if that thing falls on you, you are done. And it is very, very, very expensive. Probably the most expensive scope on the field, and then not even, counting the trailer it came in and the little motorized thing. So it was, again, envy. Everyone was very envious of it. But it also helped justify no matter how much you spend on your own telescope and your own equipment, it's still less than that. You can justify that to your spouse. So, yeah. Down in the middle, lower piece, this again is my little ice fishing shelter. Again, it's kind of place to keep the mosquitoes off or keep a little warm. But it's where I can do my EAA from, and it's completely light proof. So again, just some pictures of Staunton River. We'll jump to the next slide. Here you can see the signs welcoming you to Staunton River. I don't know if that one references that it's an International Dark Sky Association location. Down below it on the left-hand side, when we did have vendors, that's a picture of the vendors. Another view of the field. That's a picture of Doug right there and his wife set up. Another really neat thing, this is just a picture of some of the talks that we can do, or we'll see. Sometimes they're very impromptu. And one of my favorite memories has to be the eclipse that we were able to see, a very partial eclipse back in November or October of 2014. Yeah, it must have been October. So those are just some great memories and photographs of Staunton River, and just an absolute worthwhile place to go. Any comments on Star Party? Sorry.
It's not. Mic drop.
Yeah, that's right.
Literally, mic drop.
Well, we have had a discussion, perhaps another meeting we might go to more detail about what you might expect at this particular star party. But people were wondering about where to get out on this field because it's enormous. It's like several football fields. And people on our listserv were coming up with all sorts of strange theories about why you would pick a place. But basically, when you come in, you'll come in, the road runs on the north side of this field. There's really no way you can completely shield yourself from that. But if you're going to image or look to the south, then you're probably better over on the north side a little bit. And if you're going to do things in the north, then I would go to the south side. The east side is near the parking lot and the building, the administrative building. There are two there's nice restroom facilities inside. There are porta johns outside. But if you stop at that end, it's no different, except that there is one permanent electric place there. But across the field, the park has been unbelievably helpful. They come out and set up these stations with huge electric cords. They go out into the field, and then they go smaller and smaller, and then you bring a long drop cord to get to wherever you are. So probably we should discuss in the future with clubs, would it be better to put imagers separately than visual or not?
We always set up at the weather station.
Yeah, well, we always do that because it's near the back.
Yeah.
There's no
Give it away
magical
to
secret to it. And it's also the first place that we get to when we pull into the parking lot. If you come later, then you're kind of going to be further out of the field. But there's no reason to not be in any particular place.
I mean, it depends on how many people there.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
sometimes
there were some people that had problems because it just got loaded up so much that there were some current drops.
Well, okay, that could be an issue, not for visual service.
No, this is for images.
Yeah, but the one thing there is an underground mesh, some sort of fiber material that has been laid out and grass has grown through it. And one group, a religious group, was there and saw some sticking up and were digging it up until the rangers realized they were providing a service, so they had to put it back. But it is they make roads so you can drive around safely and not get into a like we have to worry about at Big Woods where you stick in the soil. But if you're driving something like an RV or a large vehicle, you really should walk the field first because there are a few places that are a little low, and we have seen someone get stuck. And don't do that. But if you stay on the road areas or stay on a high spot, it's never been a problem. So, yeah, so we're running low.
Yep, definitely. Okay. We'll jump over, and I think next slide we are running a little over, so I apologize, Doug. But we've talked about the dark skies and what they offer you. Now, what can you do to make the most out of your observations under those dark skies? So here you go.
Thanks, Mike. So yeah, now that you're out, you're geeked up for going out to a star party. How do you make the most of it? And so I really wanted to try and take this moment to say, here's some ideas that you can take to heart to actually improve your observing experience and your observations. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so first of all, I think it's really important that you choose something from the Astronomical League. If you have no idea what you want to look for, the Astronomical League has got a great set of lists for you to draw from. And so I've done this before. I've talked about it before. You can go out to the Astronomical League, and if you look right here on the picture that Mike's provided on the right here, we've got novice, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So all the programs are actually there for you to choose from based on your experience level. Now, once you start going to these star parties, you start meeting other astronomers, you start actually getting more involved in the club and in some of the club groups. You're going to find out that people are talking about different kinds of objects. The imagers are always talking about what they're imaging, what they're looking at. We've got many of the visual observers. We even have an older group, I like to call them the ancient astronomers, but it's really the RAC group. And we talk about many of these, many objects to look at. So, I mean, getting involved in the club first is really important, and getting involved in chat on our listserv will really help you with respect to what's coming along. Anyway, but if you're completely clueless of what to do, go over here and grab something from the AL and start working on one of those lists. All right, go ahead. And if you do start working on a list, you can get credit for your observation. You can turn it in, but to get credit for it, A, you've got to be a Raleigh Astronomy Club member. B, make sure that you check your requirements and are listing all the data requirements that they ask for. And once you meet those data, each program has different data requirements. I put some of the things up there that are on there. I just read through the program, make sure that you understand it. If you have a question, you can always ask me. I'm actually your friendly neighborly Alcor for Raleigh Astronomy Club, and I'll be happy to answer your question. All right, let's go to the next one. And then again, some of the requirements, like for instance, if there's, if you're doing a binocular Messier program, generally like out of the easy objects, you've got to get all that list right there. And believe me, it looks like a lot of numbers right there, but one night I just sat out on the lawn chair and I got 30 of them. So it's pretty easy to get those. But you do need to make sure that you get your observations in, right? Because you won't get the award or the recognition. But, so do really try to make your requirements. Let's go to the next slide. One of the things that's important is to plan your observation. So if you're going to go out, make sure that you're looking at the weather. I've used one here. This is the top left is the National Weather Service forecast. I like that one probably best. I know a lot of you use Astrospheric to look at, but I like the National Weather Service one. So you can see that over here on the right, Tuesday, January 7th was not a good night, a good day. And this kind of funny looking picture here you see here is the water vapor loop. So you generally the day up, we'll go out and look at the water vapor loop. It really is important. If you can understand where the blue piece is, that's actually wet, and where the brown is, that's dry. So if you know where the dry air is, that's the best place to observe. So if you have dry air over North Carolina, like we did right there in this picture, that's going to be a good observing generally. So always look at the water vapor loop. Do try to plan your observations so you're not kind of caught out in the weather. Again, as Mike mentioned earlier, a lot of times we get in trouble here at the club because we're overly cautious. We want to make sure that safety is always first. And so we will have a tendency to cancel events if we feel that there's a lightning threat or there's a rain threat. In particular, it might be a lightning threat. The lightning might be over in Durham, but lightning can actually travel 25 miles from its host cloud, and in some cases even further. So you don't want to be out in those situations, out in the field where you can actually put the public at harm. So we're very cautious about that. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is just another example of a weather app. This is Astrospheric. It's very popular. It's very good as well. Go to the next slide. Okay, so when you're actually doing your observation, you might want to select some star maps to take around with you. You want maybe some pen and paper or something. You can also log them in or your observations in Excel. It's really easy to do. If you need special filters, it's always good to try and pick something out like that. Most of us use a logging application. So some of us use Phyllis's product, which is up there, Deep Sky Planner, and upper right hand, upper left hand, right hand of the screen. It's a great program. But anyway, it makes it a lot easier to log your stuff, and then you can just print those logs out, submit them to me, and that's what we use for actually submitting to the AF. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so when you're observing, try to know something about the object that you're looking at. All right, so if you're going to look at a globular cluster, find out something about the particular globular cluster. It will really help. Okay, or if it's an open cluster or a planetary nebula. We see these names M80, M44, M57, M1, and many of us have memorized them from doing the prior AL programs. But if you don't know that M80 is a globular cluster, you see, that's something you need to go ahead and find out. So do try to know something about the object that you're trying to look at. It will help you understand it. You got to remember that, especially if you're new at this, your brain has never seen anything like this. So when you first see it in the telescope, it may take you a few minutes for your brain to actually process that image. So again, try to find something out about it, try to find out maybe a prior image of what it might look like, so you can have some expectations of what to see. Some of the newer stuff on the web, you can actually see, if, like for instance, if you have let's say you have an 8-inch telescope, you can actually get that visualization of the object through simulated as an 8-inch visualization. So it's a good way to actually know what you're going to see before you try to look for it. All right, let's go next. And then here's some others, dark nebula. It's just knowing the types of things that you can look at: dark nebula, diffuse nebula, reflection nebula, emission nebula. What's the difference between these? And so try to understand what those are. All right, let's go to the next one. Galaxies. Everybody likes to look at galaxies. One of the first things that a lot of times in the public star parties I'll hear, oh, let's see a galaxy. Of course, it's usually easy just to move over to M31 and draw a galaxy and take a look at it. But one of the things is try to understand how galaxies vary from one galaxy to the next. This is basically a morphology, which is basically how one galaxy changes from the other. And so try to understand that. If you're going out galaxy hunting one night, try to find out something about the galaxy that you're trying to hunt down. And and especially if you're going to log an observation. We'll get into logging observations in just a minute. But you do want to say something about the object. I mean, I've seen in some of the ALCOR reports I get, some people will say, well, I found the nib, and then I went to another star, and then I went down here, and then I found the veil net. And then that's all I get. I need something. You need to say something about the object. So, tell me what you're looking at rather than just, like for instance, it could be so simple. The galaxy was an elliptical galaxy, but sometimes these elliptical galaxies are not just white blobs. Sometimes they're diffuse, they're very, they're almost transparent because you can't really tell what the surface brightness is. So, try to say something about it. Sometimes, galaxies will have a central bulge. And you say, well, I can see a central bulge or a central core. And then sometimes that brightness, that central brightness will trail off towards the edges. So say that, it's easy to say, and so try to think about your object when you're looking at it and things that you might have to say about it. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so, and Jim, you might want to say a few words about this, but some of the tricks of the trade, when you are looking for these objects, they are faint. There's a reason why we call them faint and fuzzy. That's because when you actually do find it in your telescope, you're going to find it's a faint object and it's fuzzy. One of the techniques I use is, well, how do you know if you're focused on a fuzzy object or not? Well, I just look at the background stars. If those background stars are pinpoints of light, I've found focus. So you've got focus locked at that point. But some of the ideas, things that you can use while you're at the scope is this idea of averted vision. So when you're looking at an object in your telescope, don't necessarily place it at the very center. And this is why in your eye, well, we mentioned earlier, there are rods and cones. Cones are for color, rods are for black and white. So your cones are centered mainly in the center part of your eye. That's where your cones are mainly distributed. And then your rods are surroundings. So you're able to see and perceive grayscale images a lot better at night when, of course, light is reduced. So part of an averted vision technique is to move the object off center and then look in the center. That way you're using this side of your eye to try and locate the object. That's important. You might want to just close your eye for just a few seconds, even just a few seconds, and then open your eye back up, and you may be able to see much more detail. We have had a few people in the club in the past who actually would wear a patch all day long before they went out observing, and then they would open it back up. That was 𝙈𝙤𝙀 years ago, for those of you who don't remember Eric. But that is a little extreme. I'm not unless you're on Pirate Day and you want to speak like a pirate, then I wouldn't recommend doing that just for the general public. It could raise a concern. Wait, go back.
I'm sorry.
All right, so thumping the telescope is a really good one. So if you're just there, you know you're on the object and you just can't see it, try thumping the side of the tube, or not too heavily, but just knock the tripod leg just a little bit. Don't knock yourself out of alignment, but just give it a little bit of vibration. It introduces a vibration into the system, will kind of help your rods and your rods especially pick up that very
Because that
faint light
movement?
that you're looking for.
Because it's moving?
Because it's moving.
Oh, okay.
So those are some of the things. You want to observe the object in your eyepiece. Again, closing your eyes 5 to 10 seconds. Some people use a shroud. Those aren't really used as much anymore either. But if you're really looking for something faint and you want to cut out all the light, do that. All right, let's go next. This is just an example of what a log might look like if you're using a logging utility. So you get all this stuff put in a nice format, and you're not having to just run down an Excel spreadsheet. So this is just what an example of a log might look like. This is just kind of the technical data, and then let's go to the next one. And then when you're about to actually write a description, this is why I'm really trying to ask people is to do a better job of writing a description about what you see. Does it have a shape? Is it round? Is it ovular? Is it triangular? What are you looking at? What can you see? Does it have a pattern? So like in the case of some of the open clusters, some of them might look like a coat hanger or a beehive or an airplane or an owl or something like that etched out in stars. So does it do that? Are there colors? Some of you, especially ladies, have a much better ability to process color than guys do. So you might be able to see a color. Also, if you're younger, when I was a young man, I could see rose and olivine in the Orion Nebula. Now that I'm older, I can only see gray and blue. So, is there a uniform, or is it fading out? All right, let's go to the next one. And finally, you want to try to make very descriptive ones. This middle one here, NGC 6426. This was an interesting globular cluster to view. It was not easy to find, even with a go-to scope. Careful study of surrounding star patterns is a must for this object. So you want to be descriptive, so others who might come along after you will have instructions on how to find it. We do post these on our website once you submit them to me, so others can have an example of what to look for. You can say, after lingering at the eyepiece and using averted vision, I was able to make out a slightly brighter central core trailing into dim stars of the outer edge. It's a beautiful object to behold, delicately crafted, diaphanous in appearance. So you can wax poetic on somebody if you want. Next, please. And then, of course, you can submit once you're done with all your observations, submit them to me. I'm the actual ALCOR representative. I'll take a look at them, make sure they're complete. If there's anything that's missing, I'll give you a call and say, hey, can you correct this? And what we want to do in that case is make sure that when we do make a submission to ALCOR, it goes as a complete package and they won't be coming back with questions and stuff like that and delay your overall board. Yeah, okay, what's next? And that's it. Thank you all.
So I guess if we have any questions in the chat room, we'll probably open those up. No? Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions? Pardon?
Nothing new.
Nothing new. Okay. Any questions here in the room of what we covered for Jim, Doug, or myself?
Another interesting comment, where it says, don't touch any equipment unless the operator of that particular scope is there. Otherwise, they might have a camera or imaging equipment attached to it, making a long exposure.
Yeah.
And you don't want to create a ghost image off of it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Question for Chris.
So Doug, you're our ALCOR representative here. So you know all about this, because I'll just gave the rundown of what you guys do here. But you personally, how many of these have you completed?
Okay, well, that's a good question. I've actually completed That's a good question. Chris's question was how many of these ALCOR programs have I personally completed? More than 10. Okay. I will tell you, some of them do take a little bit of time to complete. Okay? And plus, too, when I was working and everything, it took a lot longer. And then, of course, we've had really awful weather ever since COVID started. So, but yeah, I probably have I'm going to say probably a good 11, 12, or 13, but 10 of them actually went to the Master Observer program. So once you get 10 that are in the process for the Master Observer, then you get the award Master Observer. So that's another thing too. If you do want to follow that progression, there are a set of programs you should follow. Basically, you get 5 electives, so that's basically anything you want to choose in terms of an observing program. And then there are 5 core programs that you want to select. That's basically the Messier program, the binocular Messier, the Lunar 1, Lunar 2s, the double stars, and
I have,
Chris, do you want to have a follow-up?
I have one Master Outreach Award and also have my own brand of astronomy observing, where I can use large panels to recreate events like eclipses and stuff, or see grand scenic views, and can even dim them to dark sky specifications, or even use them where observing can go on even inside of museums, for example.
Yeah, Doug, one more question. As far as like the imaging group goes, can you give us an input of probably what's some of the most popular programs with outboard imagers like you do?
Now that's a great question. So in the last few years, the Astronomical League has modified it. These actually did start out as all visual programs. But what they did was they have now converted every one of the programs into visual or imaging. So there are specific requirements for imaging that are a little different than for the visual observers, and it's mainly because they'll generally want you to add camera data to your actual image. But you can take part in every one of these imaging challenges, like the Messier, your comets, asteroids, all these things. All you have to do is start one of these programs and fulfill the requirements. Another thing I do want to say is, if you made an observation years ago and you still have the camera data, it's valid. Put it in there. So you can, you probably have quite a few images that you could go ahead and add. What's that?
Do you use visual and image together for the same?
You can. You can add your visual data that you want. Now they do want you to. I would say that it is a little extra for the imagers because they're adding their camera data and their image. And I will say that you can also use if you're using one of these web-based products like Telescopium or what's the other one that's on the top of my head? There's anyway one of these programs where you basically can upload your data. Astrobin, that's the one I was talking about. Yeah. So you can provide a link to that. It's just important that you make sure that you also they still want a description of what you see, because it's not just it's more than just having to.
But what I'm saying, can you sketch some of the part of it and then do image some of the parts?
Yeah, you're welcome to do as much as you want. If there is a sketching requirement for it, like for instance, double stars, the double star program requires you to sketch every one of your double stars. I believe I'm not sure. I haven't looked at that for what they did for the imaging, but I think that for the imaging piece, they just need to show an image of that. But you can sketch. We've had people in the club who have done the Herschel 400s, and they've done images and sketches of both.
Or half and half, kind of half sketch, half of the objects and image the other one half. Or does it need to be one or the other?
Well, you have to choose your path. So if you're gonna do imaging, then you need to provide images for everything.
Okay.
And then you can decide to sketch if you want. If you're going to do sketching or whatever, then you
Everything
can sketch
should be
everything. You know.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, but yeah, it's, and yeah, they love people who want to do sketching. You know, and it's really, it's fun. I've done several sketching programs myself and, you know, it can be really good, you know, you put a lot into it. See if you ever come. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Oh, yeah.
Earlier, you had the charts up from weather.gov showing temperature and the dew point. And I was curious if anyone has experienced problems with that being accurate. Okay, because the last two sessions of Owlwood and then the Three Bears Acres, I went to that chart to say, when's the dew going to show up? And it looked like it was going to be clear sailing till 6 a.m. Those lines were not even close to crossing. But both events, 11:15, everything's wet. You know,
That last rack off that we had,
Yeah.
that wasn't supposed to be any dew out there. I'm off the mic.
Yeah, so no, that's a good point. And again, realize when they have the dew point, that's the temperature, obviously, where things will start to condense. So it's quite possible that your optics will get colder than ambient and could get cold enough down to that dew point where it kind of flash.
The glass cools
So
faster.
the glass will cool faster than the ambient air. So even though the dew point could be, I don't know, 56 and it's 66 outside, but if you've got a big piece of glass on like an 11-inch shrink acid grain, it's going to radiate heat, especially pointing up. So even though we're not necessarily at that dew point, just it's the fact that that scope has lost the heat. So yeah, you can do up anytime.
Right, I've been out of big woods and we've had waves of humidity coming out the lake.
Yeah.
And every time one of those bubbles of warm, humid air came through, everything would fog up and then dry air would blow it away.
Yeah, so Steve was telling us about, you know, a lot of us have experienced that out of big woods, and you can feel the humid air just coming right off the lake. And exactly, you just gotta just everything starts to just get coated. And you know, Staunton River is just like it. I mean, you are literally between two bodies of water, and yes, three bodies of water. So and we've had a lot of good discussions recently on dew control, what you need to do on the surface. So yeah, something you really need to, if you've got a shrimp acid grain or even refractors, you know, the Dobsonians or Newtonians are less apt to do that because you don't have the big piece of glass right at the end. But yeah, it's, you know, there are times where it's like, yeah, I'm so far away from the dew point, I should have a problem, and yet everything gets covered.
Hey, real quick, one other extra comment on that. Remember, you're looking at a model. So there's a mathematical model that has been formulated and presented, but there's a lot of mitigating factors that can happen that they weren't able to take into account. And so, again, it's a model. And usually, and Mike actually is one of the big experts of this. He put together something about 12 or so different models to actually arrive at a go, no-go decision. So it's just really important to realize that's what you're looking at. We've got probably about 3 or 4, like Astrosphere, the National Weather Service, of course, the water vapor loop, stuff like that, that really do help to try and help us kind of make that determination. But at the end of the day, like Mike and some of the others, and you yourself has noticed, after you've done all this planning and everything, you get out there and all of a sudden, whoosh, you just got that dew, just humidity just comes right down, glass cools off, starts doing up. Sometimes you just can't do anything.
Does anyone build or sell OTAs with built-in dew heaters? And if not, why not?
There was in the past, there was quite a bit of people here in the club were doing some DIY projects where they were doing their own dew heaters. But it's almost, by the time you put the effort into it, you could have probably bought it Mike that might have something to share about that.
Yes, so Celestron just came out with, they call it a dew heater ring, and I picked up one. So instead of your typical dew heater strap going around the outside of your scope and trying to then kind of heat from the outside in, what this dew ring does is it actually replaces that little plastic ring that helps hold your corrector plate on. And on the back of it, it's got the resistors and the heating elements. So it's heating, it's literally touching the glass and heating the glass, and it's much more efficient. So, and
I built one, and it's tough.
it is tough. And I will say the price point for just a dew heater ring is the same as a dew strap. I went to go buy one for my 8-inch, and they're the same price. After doing the dew heater ring. Pardon?
$54. It'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah, so for an 8-inch, I paid $53 for the 8-inch ring.
That's like,
Yeah, you still need the controller, and you need
on the efficiency, you're not gonna use it.
yeah, and
A lot easier.
you'll definitely use a lot less electricity to heat that. So again, you don't need to bring your 60-pound marine style battery out.
Does it read the ambient air matchup?
So the question here, does it read the ambient air? The dew ring itself does not, but it has a thermistor port that you can plug in. So it will, if you've got a dew controller that can read that data, it will. So, and that's another thing, especially as you get bigger aperture scopes that need more electricity to heat. You want to have a way to just barely use enough electricity or enough power to heat just above dew point, but not introduce too much heat. So either you produce any sort of thermal currents in your telescope, but you also don't wind up fisting your battery. So using those, again, using something that's a little more smart and able to kind of build use real life data to figure out how much you need to heat your optics is going to be helpful. So, all right, well, I know we've gone on quite a bit, so I do appreciate everyone's attention. Thank you to Jim and Doug for helping out with this, and thank you all for tuning in, and appreciate everyone's support. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.